Imagine a single motivated worker tasked with pulling a heavy rope. If that person can pull exactly 100 units of force, you'd naturally expect a synchronized team of 8 equally capable people to pull 800 units. But human psychology doesn't follow basic arithmetic. When you put those 8 people on the rope, they collectively generate a mere 392 units, less than half of their actual mathematical potential. This severe drop in individual effort was first recorded back in the 1880s by a French agricultural engineer named Max Ringelmann. You probably know this exact phenomenon even if you don't pull ropes for a living. If you've ever been on a massive corporate Zoom call where the project leader asks a direct question to the group, only to be met with agonizing silence and a grid of muted microphones, you've seen it firsthand. Or maybe you've walked down the hallway, seen the shared office printer flashing a bright red empty toner light, and kept right on walking, assuming the next person will eventually deal with it. These daily occurrences are rarely born of malicious intent or inherent laziness. They are predictable, statistically measurable symptoms of a psychological reality known as social loafing, an invisible anchor that actively drags down collective human potential. When you multiply those small office moments across the entire global workforce, the financial damage is staggering. This animated global map visualizes the macroeconomic toll. Disengaged employees actively cost the global economy $8.8 trillion annually. The consequences escalate severely when this dynamic infiltrates high-pressure environments. In fields like software engineering and healthcare, a core safety protocol is the 4 Eyes principle, the strict requirement that a second professional independently verifies a system to catch errors. A 2022 quality assurance study exposed a terrifying flaw in this protocol. On this chart tracking 2 parallel QA timelines, watch what happens to the second checker. When they can see the previous notes and approvals of the first checker, their diligence plummets. They unconsciously coast. Because the task was already evaluated by a competent colleague, their own sense of personal responsibility evaporates. They simply assume any glaring errors have already been caught. Simply adding more people to a project or stacking redundant layers of oversight does not linearly increase your output or safety. It actively introduces dangerous new vulnerabilities by structurally stripping away individual accountability. Social loafing is an automatic behavioral adaptation. The brain is relentlessly wired to optimize energy expenditure. Whenever you face a new task, your mind instantly calculates the required effort against the potential reward. The moment you introduce additional people into that calculation, a mechanism called the diffusion of responsibility takes over. The psychological weight of the outcome is rapidly distributed and diluted among all the participating members. This is the root cause behind the famous bystander effect. In a crowd of 50 people, an individual hesitates to help in an emergency because they make the comforting yet erroneous assumption that someone else has already stepped up. Inside a team, this dynamic triggers a highly toxic secondary reaction known as the sucker effect. High-achieving employees quickly realize their peers are coasting. Driven by a deep desire for fairness, these top performers deliberately reduce their own effort, refusing to carry the entire workload while free-riding peers share the exact same credit. This initiates a catastrophic downward spiral. Morale sinks, resentment mounts, and the lowest common denominator of effort rapidly establishes the permanent new baseline for the organization. When individual inputs are entirely obscured by a monolithic group outcome, fear of negative evaluation vanishes. Without direct, transparent comparison to peers, the human drive to excel is instantly neutralized. This behavioral withdrawal shows up differently depending on regional corporate culture. In the hyper-competitive United States, employees mask loafing as self-preservation. They adopt boundary-driven behaviors like coasting or resenteeism, executing the bare minimum to avoid systemic burnout. Across the Atlantic, the United Kingdom utilizes social concealment. British employees often hide a lack of tangible productivity behind the conviviality of the office, remaining highly active in frequent tea rounds and local pub visits to mask their disengagement. In Australia, a cultural tolerance for the casual afternoon slowdown has bred a vocabulary around avoidance. They call a chronic avoider a bludger, someone who purposefully holds back and waits for the inevitable sucker to volunteer for shared tasks. Between 2024 and 2026, the global shift to remote and hybrid work environments acted as a massive, uncontrollable multiplier for the Ringelmann Effect across all borders. When colleagues are suddenly separated by screens, time zones, and asynchronous communication, physical distance mutates into mental distance. The lack of shared office space and the comfort of muted microphones completely strips away the identifiability and peer pressure required for accountability. Whether it is cleverly masked by regional corporate rituals or hidden behind a turned-off webcam, the ability to disappear within a system inevitably supercharges the diffusion of responsibility. To fix this, we have to look at social loafing's direct psychological inverse, social facilitation. Back in 1898, researchers noticed competitive cyclists actually raced significantly faster when riding directly against human opponents compared to racing alone against a stopwatch. The difference lies in the arrangement of social consequences. Simple tasks with highly visible individual metrics generate high arousal and drive. But the second you pool those efforts into an indivisible group metric, you trigger automatic loafing. Jeff Bezos understood this math perfectly during Amazon's hypergrowth phase, resulting in a famous structural defense, the two-pizza rule. The rule mandates that no internal team should ever be larger than the number of people who can be adequately fed by 2 large pizzas. Capping a team at a strict maximum of 5 to 8 members, physically and psychologically, makes hiding impossible, while actively minimizing communication overhead and coordination loss. You must also enforce role irreplaceability. You assign tasks to distinct, non-overlapping specialties, like one designer, one dedicated researcher, and one data analyst. If one person fails, their specific failure stalls the entire project, making their effort completely transparent. Leaders cannot cure social loafing by simply demanding that people work harder. You have to systematically engineer the architectural environment so that every individual contribution is visible, distinct, and absolutely essential. Take a look at this diagnostic scorecard to conduct an unflinching assessment of your most recent collaborative project. First, look at your structural scale. Can your core decision-making team be adequately fed by 2 large pizzas? If there are more than 8 people in the room, you are practically guaranteeing an exponential decline in effort. Second, assess your visibility. If a specific teammate vanished today, exactly how many days would it take leadership to notice a quantifiable drop in output? Prolonged invisibility means your team is hiding in the crowd. Take this framework into your workplace tomorrow. Use it to identify the structural redundancies and permanently sever the invisible anchors dragging down your team's true potential. If you want to continue uncovering the hidden psychological forces that dictate human behavior and invisibly influence your daily decision-making, subscribe to the channel for more